A black girl got lost while looking for a studio. She opened the wrong door and walked into a Mafia meeting. He gave her a choice, die or work for them. She begged to stay alive. Let's go back a week. Enjoy. Camilla Jenkins is driving. She's late. A new client, a Korean designer, is waiting for her at his studio in another neighborhood. She decides to take a shortcut and turns off the main road. The streets here become narrower, quieter. The signs are covered in unfamiliar Chinese characters. She glances at the GPS, then at the house numbers. They're out of order. She frowns as she passes another intersection. There must be a turnoff somewhere around here. In her haste, she sees a familiar number on the corner and, without thinking twice, turns right onto a narrow, almost deserted street. The street is a dead end. At the end stands a high gray wall. Camilla slows down. Her GPS shows a blinking destination. Right here, she sees a massive wooden gate in the wall. Attached to it is a dark metal plate with the very number she was looking for. Strange place for a studio, she thinks. But anything can happen in her business. Clients love unusual locations. She parks nearby, grabs her bag of camera equipment, and gets out of the car. The air here smells of damp earth and wood. She approaches the gate. It looks solid, ancient. Camilla searches for a doorbell or intercom, but finds none. She carefully pushes the heavy gate. It sways inward with a soft creak. The gate is unlocked. They're probably waiting for clients or a delivery man, she thinks. This explanation seems logical. Camilla steps inside, finding herself in a small, immaculate courtyard. No one is around. The silence is absolute, only the distant hum of the city. She sees a traditional Korean house, with sliding doors of dark wood and matte paper. Camilla looks around. Everything looks expensive, stylish, but too empty. There's no sign with the studio's name, no welcome mat, no signs of creative clutter, boxes of props, or racks of clothes, just gravel underfoot, a few potted dwarf pines, and impeccable silence. For the first time, a slight feeling of unease stirs in her chest. She takes out her phone to double-check the address, but the reception here is poor and the page won't load. She decides to ask if this is the right studio. Maybe the entrance is on the other side. Camilla approaches the main sliding door of the house, and then she hears voices. They come from behind the paper walls, muffled but distinct. They are men's voices. They speak Korean, and even without knowing the language, Camilla catches the tense, sharp tone. One voice is quiet and commanding, the other insistent, almost like an excuse. This doesn't sound like they're preparing for a photo shoot. It sounds like a serious, difficult conversation, not meant for prying ears. She freezes in place, unsure whether to knock on the door or quietly leave. Her camera bag suddenly feels unbearably heavy. The thought flashes automatically, as an excuse for this ringing silence and strangeness. Of course, a dressing room or a model's room. They're getting ready. And a serious conversation is probably the art director and the client discussing the final details. This logic, familiar and practical, momentarily drowns out her anxiety. Camilla decides the best course of action is to introduce herself and clarify where she's expected. She doesn't want to appear unprofessional, standing there hesitating. Better to take the initiative. With her free hand, she grabs the wooden handle on the sliding door and gives it a light but confident tug. The paper panel slides aside with a soft rustle, revealing the interior. Before her is a spacious room, traditional in style, but devoid of any decorative frills. The floor is heated, and in the center is a low, dark table. 5 men are seated around it, and all of them, as if on cue, abruptly stop their conversation and turn their heads in her direction. The sound stops as abruptly as if it had been cut with a knife. The silence that follows is deafening. Camilla's gaze automatically scans the table, searching for cups of tea or fabric swatches. But there is none of that on the table. Only a few stacks of neat papers, a couple of expensive pens, and a single mobile phone lying exactly in the middle, like the center of the universe of this strange gathering. Her eyes involuntarily meet the gaze of the man sitting in the center, facing the door, Kim Taeyong. He's not old, but his face has a heavy, unwavering stance. He doesn't flinch, doesn't show surprise. His dark eyes narrow just a millimeter, fixating on her figure in the doorway. There's no anger or fear in his gaze. There's only a momentary, chilling calculation. He scans her like a system. The woman, the bag, the fear in her eyes, the wrong place. This gaze lasts less than 2 seconds, but Camilla feels it with her whole body. It's a gaze that doesn't ask, but assesses the degree of threat. And now, without meaning to, she is that threat. The shock of the sudden silence gives way to a swift, sickening realization in Camilla. This isn't a dressing room. This isn't a pre-shoot meeting. The atmosphere in the room is thick, heavy with something serious and private. The men are dressed in expensive but formal suits, their postures tense, even despite their apparent stillness. She hasn't burst into a studio. She's burst into a private gathering, a very private one. And judging by the sudden silence in those faces, it's a gathering where outsiders aren't just unwelcome, they're impossible. An icy wave rolls down her spine and grips her stomach with a heavy, unpleasant chill. She feels the blood drain from her face. Her lips part. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm at the wrong door," she mutters in English, her voice incredibly loud in this deathly silence. Alien and weak, instinct tells her to run. Immediately, she takes one sharp step back, stepping on the threshold. Her movement is awkward, panicked. At that moment, she notices the youngest of the men, Kang Minhu, sitting closest to the exit. He doesn't get up, but his body, relaxed a second ago, is now tensed like a spring. His gaze no longer looks at the boss, but watches her intently, tracking every detail of her attempt to escape. The space between her and freedom suddenly ceases to be just empty space. It becomes a distance to be crossed, and it is already guarded. Camilla takes another step back, her back almost touching the doorframe. She tries to sneak a quick glance at the courtyard exit, mentally plotting a path to the gate. But that path is now blocked. Kang Minhu, the same young man, now stands directly in front of the open doorway leading to the hall. He hasn't raised his hands, nor has he assumed a threatening pose. He simply stands, blocking the light from the next room. His arms rest calmly by his sides, but his broad shoulders and straight back convey an absolute animal-like readiness. He resembles a very calm and very attentive security guard at the entrance to a private club. He doesn't glare at her. His face is almost impassive, but his presence is a physical barrier, a quiet, unmistakable sign. No further. A voice cuts through the silence in the room. Clear, low, without a hint of excitement. It's the man at the head of the table, Kim Taeyong. He doesn't raise his voice. "Who are you?" His English is perfect, almost accentless, which makes him sound even more distant and cold. This isn't a question from someone wanting to get to know her. It's an interrogator's question, demanding an immediate, identifying response. It's a demand dressed up as politeness. His eyes never leave her face, studying every micro-reaction. Camilla feels her throat tighten. She tries to swallow, but her mouth is dry. Her thoughts are racing. She needs to explain. She needs to prove her innocence, her accident. "I'm a photographer. I have a shoot. I'm looking for a studio." Her voice breaks. She frantically digs into her jacket pocket, takes out her phone. Her fingers, usually so nimble and sure, are now difficult to obey, sliding across the glass. She struggles to turn on the screen, opens the app with the address. "Here, look, I need to go here. Yongjuro, 14. I must have made a mistake." She holds out the phone like a white flag. The screen glows brightly in the dim room, and she sees her own hand tremble, treacherously, slightly. This trembling is visible to everyone. It betrays her fear, her complete vulnerability. No one reaches for their phone. Taeyong doesn't even look at it. He simply turns his head slightly toward the man sitting to his left, the one with the glasses and the intelligent, attentive face. "Joan, Hansol." Without a word, he rises smoothly and approaches Camilla. His movements are economical and silent. He doesn't snatch the phone, but takes it from her trembling fingers almost politely. He studies the screen for a few seconds, his gaze sliding to the address. Then he looks up and glances at Taeyong. A silent dialogue takes place between them, understandable only to them. Hansel nods, barely but clearly. Once. "Yes. The address is similar, but it's not the right address." This confirms her story, but does not excuse it. The error is acknowledged, but the fact remains. She is here. Now, after that nod, the silence in the room changes its character. It becomes heavy, thick as syrup. Before, it held the tension of an unexpected intrusion. Now it holds a cold understanding of consequences. Camilla walked through the wrong door. She saw their faces, all 5 of them. She caught them in the middle of a serious, private conversation, the tone of which boded ill. She is a witness. Accidental, involuntary, but a witness nonetheless. And now she stands in a lair whose nature she is already beginning to dimly discern. An icy lump of fear settles finally in her stomach. She sees the faces of the other men at the table remain stony. No surprise, no curiosity, only anticipation. They are awaiting their boss's decision. Kim Taeyong's expression doesn't change. He doesn't get angry, doesn't yell. He simply stares at Camilla for a couple more unbearably long seconds, as if weighing something on an invisible scale. Then his gaze slides to Hansol, and he makes a barely perceptible movement with his hand, a small wave of his fingers, more like a deal with it gesture than anything else. That's enough. Hansol, still holding her phone, places his free hand on her elbow. His touch isn't rough, but firm. And Brooks, no resistance. Please come with us, he says in the same even, polite tone she imagined interacting with the Korean designer. But here, now, that politeness sounds more terrifying than any threat. Camilla is led not toward the exit, but deeper into the house. Her legs move on their own, weak and unresponsive. They pass a short, dark corridor. Hansol opens one of the lightweight sliding doors. Inside is a small, nearly empty room. A straw mat lies on the floor. A low table sits in the corner, and a lone calligraphic scroll hangs on the wall. There are no windows, nothing superfluous. Wait here, Hansol says. His voice leaves no room for questions. He still holds her phone. Camilla automatically steps inside, turning to face him. Her camera bag hangs heavily from her shoulder, suddenly completely unnecessary and inconsequential in this situation. Hansol looks at her one last time, his face expressionless in the dim hallway. Then, with a smooth, precise movement, he slides the door shut. The wooden frame slides almost silently, and then a sound is heard, soft but distinct in the absolute silence of the house. A click, metallic, dry, final. It's the sound of a small but secure lock, just clicked shut from the outside. The sound reverberates in Camilla's head like an incredible roar. It's not just the sound of a door closing, it's the sound of a slammed trap, the sound of her accidental mistake just no longer being just an awkward situation. It's the sound of her new, terrifying reality. She's locked in. She's alone. And what will happen next? She doesn't know. She slowly sinks onto the mat, unable to stand any longer, and listens to the silence, which now seems louder than any scream. Camilla sits on the hard mat, her arms wrapped around her knees. She hugs them to her chest, trying to suppress the trembling that still erupts in small spasms in her shoulders. Her brain, having shaken off the initial wave of panic, begins to work feverishly, sorting through possible actions like cards in a losing deck. Scream? Useless. This house is a fortress. Even if someone hears from the street, who will climb through these high gates? And they, these men, will be nearby. They will hear the first word. That will only make things worse. Break down the door? It looks flimsy, but it is made of thick paper and sturdy wood. The noise will be incredible. And then what? Run down the hallway where Minhu is already standing? Call? Her phone is in Hansol's pocket, or on that very table. The thought causes almost physical pain. Her entire world, all her contacts, the possibility of calling for help, in someone else's hands. She was left alone in this quiet room, smelling of wood and dust, with no connection to the outside world. This realization brought her to her senses. She hadn't simply made a mistake. She had gotten herself into trouble, and now her fate was being decided in the next room, at that low table. Time passes. Minutes feel like hours. Camilla begins to listen to every rustle of the house, trying to guess the footsteps, and then they come. Light, unhurried. Not quick and firm, like Hansol's. The door slides aside with a quiet rustle. In the doorway stands the elderly Korean man she briefly saw at the table, Park Dong-hyuk. In his hands is a small wooden tray. He enters silently, kneels before her with an ease surprising for his age, and sets the tray on the floor. On it is a simple porcelain cup with a thin stream of steam rising. The aroma of green tea faintly wafts through the air. He does not look her directly in the eyes. His movements are slow, almost ritualistic. He adjusts the hem of his jacket, and only then looks up at her. His eyes are dark, deep-set, and there is no malice in them. There is a tired, almost apathetic resignation in them. He has seen this before, many times. That look tells her more than any words. You're not the first here, and you won't be the last. He says nothing. He simply nods toward the cup, as if to say, drink. And just as silently, groaning slightly, he gets up and leaves. The door slid shut again, but there was no click of the lock. He hadn't locked it. That small sign, the open door, brings no relief. It only emphasizes there's no point in running. They're confident in their control. A cup of tea is not a concern. It's a pause, an expectation of more. She hasn't touched her tea. She sits and watches him until the steam stops rising, and then the footsteps again. This time they are familiar, even confident. Hansel enters alone. He closes the door behind him, but doesn't sit. He leans his shoulder against the wall, adopting a relaxed but observant posture. He doesn't start with threats. He starts with conversation. "You're scared. That's understandable," he says. His voice is calm, like a therapist's. "Tell me, Ms. Jenkins, how long have you been in our city?" The question catches her off guard. She mumbles an answer. 5 years. "Relatives? Family?" he continues. "No, just me," Camilla says, and it sounds pathetic and vulnerable. "Is filming a steady income?" His tone is businesslike. She shrugs, not understanding where he's going with this. "It varies. There are debts for the studio, for the equipment." He nods, as if this is exactly the answer he expected. He asks a few more questions, about her clients, about the neighborhood where she lives, about how she fills her lonely evenings. This is not an interrogation. It is a conversation that slowly but surely paints a picture of her life. Lonely, a little unsettled, kept afloat by work. He draws this information gently, without pressure, and that makes it even more frightening. He is not simply collecting data. He is creating a psychological profile of her, looking for weak spots, and he finds them. When he seems satisfied, Hansel pauses briefly. Then he pushes himself away from the wall and sits cross-legged in front of her. Now he looks at her directly. "You are an intelligent woman. You already realized you were in the wrong place," he begins. "Your randomness created a problem for us. The risk. You saw the faces. You heard. The environment. You are the uncertainty factor." Camilla tries to say something, to apologize again, but he gently raises his hand, stopping her. "I will explain the logic. The risk must be neutralized. There are 2 classic ways. The first is to make the factor disappear. Forever." He says this completely dispassionately, and Camilla freezes, her heart sinking in her chest. "But that is rude, noisy, creates more questions than it solves, and, frankly, unfair to the random person." He pauses dramatically, letting her feel the icy horror of the first option. The second way is to integrate the factor, transform him from a threat into an asset, make it so that he has neither the desire nor the reason to talk, so that his well-being is tied to our peace of mind. He looks at her, letting the words sink in. "You are in a difficult situation, Ms. Jenkins. Alone, in debt. Your life, forgive the bluntness, is quite fragile. We can break it, silently, or we can strengthen it, make it stable, in exchange for your skills and your silence, not forever, for the time it takes to solve one of our problems." He lays this terrible logic out before her, like a math problem with 2 solutions. Both are terrifying to her, but one is final and irrevocable, and the other leaves a slim chance of leaving this room alive. "You don't have to decide now. Think about it, but keep in mind, risk mitigation is our priority. Waiting is also a risk." With that, he stands up and walks out, leaving her alone with a cup of iced tea and 2 impossible paths diverging in the darkness. Hansel returns an hour later. He holds her own camera. He places it on the floor in front of Camilla. "Our offer is specific," he begins without preamble. "You will not be harmed. Moreover, you will be paid. Much more than for your usual shoots. But in exchange, you need help solving one problem with the documents. Or rather, with their visual confirmation." Camilla looks at the camera as if it were a snake. Her instrument, her creativity, is now turning into a weapon of something dark. "What exactly?" Her voice is hoarse from the silence. "We need photographs, very specific, very high quality, without distortion, with the right light, the kind that only a professional can take, not an amateur with a phone. You will take pictures of places and objects, without people. You do not need to know the context. Your task is purely technical execution, pure photographer's work. You do the work. We erase the incident, forever. You return to your life, but without debt and with a good fee. It's a deal." He says it as if it were something reasonable, businesslike, and there's an elusive truth in his tone. This might be the only way for her to get out of here. Filming instead of another neutralization. Her skill becomes her lifeline and her collar at the same time. She's not allowed to go home. That night, she stays in the same house, locked up, but they bring her a thin mattress and a blanket. In the morning, Minhu arrives. Without further ado, he gestures for her to follow him. They put her in a dark sedan with tinted windows. Hansel rides with them in the front passenger seat. No one says where they're going. Half an hour later, the car stops at an inconspicuous industrial warehouse on the outskirts. Inside, it smells of dust and concrete. The warehouse is almost empty. Stacks of clean cardboard boxes are piled in the corner. Dark stains are visible here and there on the floor, where someone has clearly tried to scrub. "You need to film this place," Hansel says, "like for a warehouse catalog, but from certain angles. These boxes, this corner where the floor is, the gate from the outside so you can see the number on the door frame. Everything is clear, detailed, no unnecessary emotion in the frame. Just the facts." He doesn't explain why. Camilla doesn't ask. She turns on the camera. The mechanical click of power is incredibly loud. She adjusts the shutter speed, the aperture. She looks through the viewfinder. The frame shows nothing but empty boxes on a gray floor. But she understands. These pictures aren't for advertising. They capture a state, the absence of something, or the presence of something that is now gone. She takes the first few shots automatically, her hands still shaking slightly. But then something clicks in her head. The light falling from the dirty ceiling window is too harsh. It creates harsh shadows that obscure the details of the floor. She needs to compensate. She adjusts the settings and takes a few test shots. Then she turns to Minhu, who is silently watching at the entrance. "I need something to reflect the light. A sheet of cardboard, anything white." Minhu looks at Hansel. He nods. A minute later, Minhu brings a large piece of packaging cardboard. Camilla sets it down, capturing the soft reflected light on those same dark spots on the concrete. She moves around the warehouse, searching for angles that will show the space in its entirety, without hidden areas. She crouches, lies on the floor to get the right angle on the gate. The physical work, the technical challenge, all of this displaces panic. Her mind is no longer filled with fear, but with familiar problems. White balance, depth of field, composition. This is her territory. Here she controls the process. Although this control is illusory and supervised, it is a lifesaver. The tremors in her hands disappear completely. That evening, she's back in the same room with the low table. On the table is her laptop, connected to a camera. Hansel and Taeyeon are looking at the screen. Camilla silently scrolls through the photos he's taken. Close up, the texture of the cardboard boxes, where the markings are visible. Wide, an empty corner of a warehouse. Every chip in the concrete clearly visible. Detail, stains on the floor at the right angle of light. The exterior of a gate, the number. Hansel studies each photo silently. Then he leans back. "Clear enough," he tells Taeyong. And in his even voice, Camilla, for the first time, detects a hint of something beyond cold assessment. A small professional acknowledgement. The photos aren't just good. They're perfect for their unspoken purpose. Be it a report for someone, proof of something, or creating an archive. Taeyong looks not at the photos, but at Camilla. His gaze is still unreadable, but the instant deadly threat assessment is gone. Now he's looking at the tool that has proven its usefulness. He nods briefly. The first stage is complete. The next day, she's given a small digital point-and-shoot, a simple, inconspicuous camera. The instructions are to once again specific. Go to a specific cafe in the business district during rush hour, sit by the window, and wait. When a man in a gray coat and glasses enters the building across the street, she's to take his photo. Close up, clear, full, face. As if it were a casual snapshot of city life, without panic, without attracting attention. Camilla complies. She sits with a cup of coffee, the camera lying on the table next to her phone. When the man appears, she raises the camera, as if capturing the view from the window, and takes several quick shots. Her heart is pounding, but her finger is steady on the trigger. She captures him just as he turns his head, the light from the cafe window falling directly on his face. A perfect portrait, full of detail. Later, looking through the photos on her laptop, Camilla catches herself thinking something strange. It's not that she just photographed someone, perhaps for some sinister purpose that bothers her. What bothers her is that in the third frame, his face is in shadow, cast by the building's overhang. "I should have taken a step further left," she thinks. "The light would have been better." She freezes, realizing this. Her professional instinct, her desire for the perfect shot, overpowered her moral anxiety. She wasn't thinking about running, about screaming, about warning this stranger. She was thinking about composition and lighting. This thought frightens her more than direct coercion. Because it comes from within, it is her own mind, finding a foothold in this absurd, dangerous situation. And that foothold is the flawless execution of her work. A day later, Hansel places a printed old photograph in front of her. It shows a street cafe, two blurry people sitting at a table, and in the background, a certain building with a unique architectural element. This scene needs to be recreated now, in the same place, same weather, same angle, but with different people, so that it looks like a fresh photo. Camilla looks at the photo, and all the pieces fall into place with a quiet, icy click. They don't need people in the photo. They need time. They need an alibi. They need proof that someone or something was in a certain place at a certain moment, and an old photograph, updated by her hands, will be that proof. She doesn't ask for whom. She takes her camera and drives to the address. She waits for random passers-by to appear at the table at the right angle. She waits for a cloud to block the sun, recreating the lighting from the old photo. She's doing the job, scrupulously, technically, without a single mistake. After this assignment, her vision seems to change. Walking back to the car, always under Minhu's supervision, but no longer under any obvious pressure, she looks at the city with different eyes. She automatically notes the locations of security cameras on buildings. She sees blind spots in alleys. She notices people standing still for too long, or windows with too many street views. She breaks the space into frames, into potential backdrops for future, unknown shots. The city is no longer a backdrop for beautiful portraits or landscapes. It is a complex living network of vulnerabilities, surveillance, and hidden narratives. She begins to understand the logic of her clients, and this understanding is not repulsive. It is captivating. There are rules here, a clear goal, cause and effect. In her previous life, there was only the struggle for clients and uncertainty. A week after her first visit to the house, Hansel calls her into his office. Her phone is on the table. He hands it to her. "Your device. There's no SIM card in it. It's been disposed of. Here." He places a new, simple smartphone next to it. "Is your new number. Only for contacting us. And for work. You will restore your personal contacts later on a new card that you will buy yourself. The old number no longer exists." This is not a return of freedom. It is exchanging one prison for another, more spacious. She has a device again, but it is connected only to them. Her old life, her friends, her clients, all of it cut off. But there is also a step forward in this gesture. They trust her with a communication device. This means they are sure she won't run to the police, or they are sure the consequences will be such that she won't dare. She takes both phones. The old one is dead weight. The new one is a thin chain. A few days later, after a series of minor technical assignments, photographing a truck schedule at a gate, the condition of the road in front of a building, Hansel invites her for a final meeting. A thick envelope lies on the table between them. "The problem you witnessed has been resolved. Thanks, in part, to your photos. They provided the necessary clarity. The risk has been neutralized. Our deal is closed." He pushes the envelope toward her. "Here is your fee, in cash. The amount, as we agreed, covers your debts and leaves you with a significant reserve. You are free. You can return to your life. We recommend that you take a vacation. Leave the city for a month or two. And when you return, just keep working. Forget this address. Forget our faces. We will forget yours." He says this as if closing the project. Everything is clean, neat, businesslike. Camilla looks at the envelope. It is thick. It means the end of fear, a return to normalcy, the financial security she's dreamed of. She must take it, get up, and leave. Forever. But when she looks up at Hansel, and then at the silent presence Tayan, the words she hadn't planned are already spilling out. Quiet but clear, before she can even think about them. Camilla looks at the envelope. It's thick, its corners sharp. It should feel like a ticket to freedom, like a heavy and welcome anchor that will return her to normal life. But instead, when she thinks about what awaits beyond the walls of this house, an emptiness opens inside her. Not fear, not relief, just emptiness. She imagines her studio, dusty windows, stacks of unpacked briefcases, a lonely chair. She remembers the endless stream of identical faces before the camera. Smiles for social media, for dating sites, beautiful, empty images. She thinks about the silence of her apartment at night, unfilled even by the barking of the neighbor's dog, only the hum of the refrigerator and her own anxious thoughts about bills. All this now seems not like life to her, but a black and white, blurry photograph, faded, meaningless. The money in the envelope will not change anything in this picture. They will only paint the same empty space in more expensive colors. Her fingers, lying on the table next to the envelope, slowly curl into a fist. She doesn't reach for the money. Instead, She pushes it away with a light, determined motion. The envelope slides along the polished wood surface and stops exactly halfway between her and Hansel. She raises her head. First, she looks at Hansel, at his intelligent, attentive face behind his glasses, at the man who spoke to her with logic, not threats. Then her gaze slowly moves to Kim Taeyong. He watches, his face a stony mask, but in his eyes, a shadow of the same cold curiosity flickers as on the first day. "My old life," Camilla begins, and her voice is unexpectedly firm. Without trembling, she pauses, choosing her words. "I'm no longer interested in it. It, has no weight. What I did here," she glances around the austere office. "It mattered. Every shot, every angle. I didn't know the context, but I knew that the quality of my work meant something real. Even if that something was like this." She hesitates to call it a crime, a violation, a darkness, but she means it. "I want to be useful. Useful here. My skills, they can be needed for more than just shooting weddings." The last sentence hangs in the air. She has said it. She is not asking to be let go. She is asking to be left behind. The choice has been made. She has rejected the sunlight for the certainty and meaning she finds in the shadows. A deathly silence descends on the room. Hansel slowly tears his eyes away from Camilla and looks at Taeyong. That silent dialogue flies between them again, a rapid exchange of assessments and calculations. Hansel raises an eyebrow slightly, as if questioning. Taeyong doesn't move. His gaze is fixed on Camilla, as if for the first time he sees not the problem or the tool, but the person behind them. He evaluates the sincerity of her words, the depth of this unexpected turn, the potential benefit and risk. A minute drags on like an eternity. Camilla feels her new, fragile resolve begin to crumble under this gaze. Has she made a terrible mistake? Will they perceive this as weakness or cunning? Finally, Taeyong looks away. He stares somewhere above her head, his voice quiet and matter-of-fact, as if he were ordering a paper delivery. "Hansel will find you a room. Here, in the house. Temporarily. Learn Korean. Basic level. This is mandatory." He pauses briefly, letting the words sink in. "It's a room. Here. Not letting go. Keeping. Start small. Photographing objects. Reporting. No questions. No initiative until you are given permission. You observe. You record. Nothing more. Understood?" And then he slowly turns his head and, for the first time since they met, looks directly at her, not as a threat or a tool, but as a newcomer, a resource who has willingly entered the game. There is no greeting or approval in his dark, unreflective eyes. There is only a cold acceptance of fact. "Welcome to the shadows, Ms. Jenkins." The words do not sound like a threat. They sound like a statement, like a baptism. She crossed the threshold, and the door closed behind her finally. Not with a lock, but by her own will. The envelope with the money still lies on the table, a silent witness to her old life, the one she'd just abandoned. She no longer has a phone with her old contacts, no debts, but now she has a room in a quiet house, the need to learn a new language, and a new, terrifying but clear goal, to be useful. She nods, unable to utter a word. The fear is gone. In its place now lies a strange, chilling clarity. Her life as a social media photographer is over. Something else is beginning. About a month has passed. Camilla lives in a small but clean room in the back wing of the building. She studies Korean for 3 hours a day with a quiet teacher who comes and goes without asking unnecessary questions. She is assigned menial, technical tasks, archiving old photos, scanning documents, processing new images in a graphics editor, removing unnecessary details, or conversely, adding the right shadows. She is a digital janitor, cleaning up reality. Hansel is her immediate supervisor. She hardly sees Taeyong, only occasionally, briefly in the hallway. He nods to her as one nods to furniture, and then passes by. One evening, Hansel takes her not to his office, but to a small enclosed courtyard of the house, where a lonely table stands. Taeyong is waiting. A thin folder lies in front of him. "Sit," he says. His English is still impeccable. Camilla sits. He studies her for a few seconds. "You're handling the routine, Hansel. I'm pleased with your precision, but routine isn't why you stayed here. You wanted meaning. Tomorrow it will appear." He opens the folder. Inside are several photographs and a rough map of the port area. There's a man, a businessman. He was supposed to give us a digital storage device. He disappeared. The device is not your concern. Your concern is him, his last place, his surroundings. We searched, but through the eyes of people who know what they're looking for. We need eyes that look, but don't know. They photograph everything. Streets, faces, signs, trash. The whole picture, no filters. You will go alone, with a camera, as a tourist. Your task is to take at least 500 pictures within a 3-block radius of the marked point. Everything. Come back and give us the memory card. That's all. Camilla looks at the map. This is her first assignment in the field, alone. And if he's there? If I see him? Taeyong looks at her directly. Then you will take his picture. And don't come close. You are the photographer. Just a photographer. Understood? There's no concern for her in his tone. There's concern for the mission. But the very fact that he's personally giving her the task, that he's taking a risk by letting her out alone, means something. Understood, Camilla says. The next day, she's wearing simple, non-marking clothes, with a tourist DSLR around her neck. They drive her to the port area and leave her on a corner. Her heart is pounding, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She begins to photograph fishing boats, rusty containers, the faces of tired workers, cats on piles of nets, blurry graffiti on the walls. She gets into a rhythm. Click, click, click. She notices details. A man, too well dressed to be a dock worker, sitting by the window in a diner. A conspicuous security camera above the door of an abandoned warehouse. A tire track on a muddy road that ends at a locked gate. She films everything. Her eye, sharpened by weeks of observational training, picks out inconsistencies. She's not looking for that person in particular. She absorbs the atmosphere of the place, its patterns, and that's why she notices him. In the shadows, under the awning of a closed repair dock, a man stands. He doesn't look like the photo in the folder. His beard, his clothes are different, but his posture, the way he holds his head, his quick, nervous glances around, scream that he's a stranger here and afraid. Without changing expression, she raises her camera and takes a series of pictures of the bay panorama, capturing him at the edge of the frame, then zooming in, as if focusing on the yacht behind him. She feels his gaze flicker over her and then bounce. Just another curious tourist. She turns and walks away, continuing to snap pictures, until she turns the corner. Only then do her knees buckle slightly. Taeyong's office. The memory card lies on the table between them. Hansel has already copied the files to his secure laptop. You saw him, Taeyong says, not as a question but as a statement. Looking through the photos Hansel is flipping through on the monitor. Yes. He's under the canopy by the third dock. I took some pictures. Hansel finds the photos, enlarges them, nods. Yes, that's him. The makeup is good, but his gait hasn't changed. Taeyong looks at the series of photos. The first, where the man is just a spot in the shadows. The second, where he is sharper. The third, almost a portrait. Weren't you scared? Didn't you run? They told me to take a picture. I took it, Camilla replies simply. Taeyong leans back in his chair. His gaze lingers on her longer than usual. You did more. You brought context. You filmed a surveillance camera we missed. You filmed a car with license plates from another region, parked 2 blocks away. You captured a face in a diner that we know doesn't belong to our friend. You weren't just clicking the shutter. You were thinking. For the first time, Camilla hears something other than icy assessment in his voice. A hint of respect, not as a useful tool, but as a smart person. It was work, she shrugs, but something warms inside. Most people in your position would see only the target or only their fear, he says. Then, looking at the monitor, he adds, Good work, Ms. Jenkins. Those words resonate louder than any fee for her. After this incident, the assignments become more complex, and Taeyong becomes increasingly drawn to her personally. He appreciates her perspective, her ability to see beyond the obvious. They begin discussing details before the trip. He explains what exactly he wants to see, what story the photographs should tell. These conversations are short and businesslike, but they create a strange tension. Synergy. He's a strategist, seeing the big picture. She's a tactician, finding visual evidence. They begin to understand each other instantly. Late one evening, she's lingering in the small room that now serves as her bedroom and office, processing a series of photos. She's tired, her eyes drooping. Suddenly, there's a soft knock on the door. She opens it. Taeyong is standing there. He's holding 2 glasses and a small thermos of something hot. Hansel said you're still working. It's keeping the others awake, he says, but his tone isn't reproachful. He enters and places the glasses on the table. Ginseng tea relieves fatigue. He pours some. They drink in silence. Then he approaches her laptop and looks at the screen. Here, He points to the photo. The shadow is on the wrong side. If someone checks the metadata and compares it to the sun's angle, they'll have questions. You need to add gradient filtering. He does it himself, his long fingers quickly gliding across the touchpad. They stand next to each other, his hand almost touching hers. Camilla feels a calm, confident warmth emanating from him, and a light, clean scent of soap and starch. She looks not at the screen, but at his profile, at the concentrated crease between his brows. At this moment, he is not a boss. He is a colleague, absorbed in a common task. "You've learned a lot in a short time," he says, without looking up from the screen. "You had someone to learn from," she replies. He turns, and their gaze meets. The room is quiet. The noise of the city does not reach here. He looks at her, and in his usually impenetrable eyes, she sees a spark of curiosity, a recognition of something kindred in her, not a romantic impulse, but a deep, serious interest in her as a person, in someone who voluntarily chose this life and turned out to be surprisingly capable. "You are not what I expected," he says quietly. "What did you expect me to be?" Camilla asks, her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. "Broken, or greedy, or stupid. You are not that. You are whole, and you have your own quiet rage, a desire for order. I respect that." He says it simply, as if it were a statement of fact. For Camilla, this is a revelation. No one in her previous life had ever seen her as whole, convenient, talented, lonely, yes, but not that. "Thank you." She can say nothing more. He finishes his tea and puts down the glass. "Early tomorrow. Go to bed, Miss Jenkins." He leaves, leaving the door open. Camilla stands in the middle of the room, holding the still warm glass. Nothing has happened between them. No touching, no hints. But something has changed. An invisible line of mutual recognition has been drawn. He allowed her to see himself as more than just a boss, but a person who values quality work and fortitude. She, in turn, allowed him to see herself as more than just a hired tool, but a person standing behind the lens. Over the next few days, their conversations remained strictly businesslike, but now there's a certain attentiveness in his gaze, as he gives instructions that wasn't there before. And as she prepares reports, she finds herself wanting not just to complete the task, but to exceed his expectations. To see that spark of approval in his eyes again. One day, he hands her a new phone through Hansel. This time, it has a full SIM card. The phone has only one number in its memory. It has no name. "For urgent matters, business only," Hansel said, but a glimmer of understanding flashed in his eyes. Camilla knows whose number it is. It's more than just a communication tool. It's a fine silver thread, stretched directly to him, a sign of trust that goes beyond mere utility. They don't cross the line of professional relationship, but the space between these boundaries is filled with a silent understanding, a shared purpose, and a quiet, growing interest in each other as the only people in their strange, closed world who understand the value of the perfect shot, not just as an image, but as a step in a complex, dangerous game. She found in the shadows not only meaning, but also someone who appreciated her ability to see in that darkness.